Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. We've made it to 2026. There's a lot of interesting things unfolding in January where I think a lot of us are going to gain some sense of clarity about moving forward with pretty much all the personal planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, going through a Cassimi. So they're all going through the heart of the sun within 17 minutes. And this is a potential time of those moments of clarity coming through that could really help us get clear on how we want to move forward in 2026, among other things that I'm going to talk about. But if you're really looking for a much more detailed monthly horoscope, definitely go check out my 2026 year ahead. The link is in the description below. It's basically a whole portal where it's your world away from the world. All of the monthly horoscope presentations are there. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. I highly suggest it. Where there's just the monthly horoscopes alone for each rising sign, you get 2+ hours of content just for the monthly horoscopes. Then there is additional content, which some of it's my own. And some of it is bonus material like Chiron going into Taurus, which we're going to get a taste of in 2026. So that's going to be, I think, a significant shift collectively for all of us. And I have that material. I have a little bit of human design mixed into it. So there's a lot of material to go through. So if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend it so that you can jump into 2026 and have time to sort of work through it the best way possible. Again, that is in the link in the description below. But like I said, I think January is an interesting time where I think a lot of us are going to be stepping into some moments of clarity. There's also a new Mars-Pluto cycle, so I'll get into that among other details. So again, if you're new here, I go based off rising sign so that it is really specific to you, personalized to you. If you do not know your rising sign, that is in the link below, or you can click on that, find out your rising sign. Maybe it's the same sign as your sun sign. You are absolutely welcome to listen to your sun sign, your moon sign, but I highly recommend listening to your rising sign or your ascendant first. Anyways, let's get into 2026. Hi, Aries Risings. On January 6th, we have a Venus Cassimi at 16 degrees in your Capricorn 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So Venus will be within 17 minutes of the sun on January 6th. And again, the arena or the stage in which this could really show up is your career, your business, your public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So definitely pay attention to any of those themes, as many of you are probably going back to work or getting acclimated after the holidays, after the new year. So Venus rules your Taurus second house of earned income and self-worth. So some of you might be going into January gaining a lot of clarity around your value systems, your self-worth, and financial themes regarding career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. Venus also rules your Libra 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. So some of you could actually gain clarity maybe within your personal partnerships that allows you to change something or shift something about what brings you fulfillment or how your overall approach to work. So something could also show up in a personal partnership that provides some clarity about what feels more fulfilling, career projects, business, public recognition, etc. So there's a lot of interesting stuff on the table, but I think definitely pay attention to how you can go into 2026 stepping into more clarity around your value, your self-worth, your financial goals, the money you want to make, the direction you want to take that with. Also, clarity around maybe business connections or professional connections and partnerships as well for some of you. Now, moving on to January 9th, we have the Mars Cassimi. So Mars will be in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes. Also in your Capricorn 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So again, Mars is exalted here, very powerful, very potent, action-oriented Mars. And again, this is a moment or a potential moment of clarity within career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. But Mars rules your first house of the self. So some of you might now be gaining clarity around your role, the direction you want to take, the independent action towards certain things. Maybe some of you are getting clarity around that. Some of you could also be gaining clarity around sort of your identity, how you want to show up in your career, your business, your public recognition. Mars also rules your 8th house. So some of you could also have additional financial themes playing a part into maybe how you want to invest in your career, or how your career is providing you investments or resources as well. So money and resources could also be a factor in this moment of clarity around your career, business, public recognition. And so Aries Risings, you are definitely going into January with a lot of potential around gaining clarity in a very visible area of your chart, with Mars being exalted here. Now, moving on to, I also want to mention just briefly, again, I go into more detail in my 2026 year ahead, but these Cassimis, these moments of clarity in this area of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment, will start to oppose this Jupiter in your Cancer 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So the clarity that you could get could cause that oppositional effect where you feel like you maybe want to be in two places at once, or how am I going to balance this? How am I going to integrate this? So this tells me that there is potential regarding the clarity, but also the opposition to Jupiter is an invitation to maybe say, hey, based off this clarity around what I just discussed, how can we integrate it within your home, family, property, and real estate? So I think a lot of you might be gaining clarity around the direction you want to take, or those additional themes that I mentioned, but then it's going to probably require some of you to balance it with the foundation of your life. Does your foundation support you? Where do you want to expand your foundation in order to support this clarity, etc.? Now moving on to January 18th, when we have this new moon in your Capricorn 10th house. Lots of stuff happening in your 10th house of career going into January. So new moon at 28 degrees in your Capricorn 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So generally speaking, a great time to set new intentions, new goals, new chapters, new ideas that you really want to cultivate over the next 5 or 6 months in this area. Now, keep in mind, you just had a couple Cassimi, so this could also be playing into setting new intentions or new chapters. Maybe you gained clarity on something, and now you want to set new goals, new chapters, new projects, etc. in this area. And January 21st, let me switch this today if you're watching. So January 21st, we have Mercury Cassimi at 1 degree in your Aquarius 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. So this could provide clarity among your social network, whether it's personal or professional. This could provide clarity around maybe the people you want to surround yourselves with that can play into achieving long-term goals, dreams, aspirations. Mercury does rule your Virgo 6th house of daily work as well. So some of you could be gaining clarity on the routines that are going to set you up for success for those long-term goals. This could also be health related regarding long-term goals, because Mercury does rule this 6th house, which also rules your health. So some of you might be looking at your overall daily work and health routines and how they are ultimately setting you up for success regarding this clarity around the long-term goals you really want, or the people you need to surround yourself with that make you feel good, that play into your vitality and the work that you want to achieve and your long-term goals. And then on January 26th, we have Neptune entering your Aries first house of self, physical body, how you show up in the world. Now, you got a little taste of this last year, and this is the final ingress, okay? So Neptune is not going to return back into your Pisces 12th house of behind the scenes, subconscious thought patterns. So you've wrapped that story up with Neptune. And like I said, this is Neptune's final ingress, and Neptune will not be returning to Pisces for, maybe off the top of my head, another 150 to 160 years roughly. So not in our lifetime, we have to worry about Neptune in Pisces. Either way, this Neptune making its final ingress into your first house. How do you want to feel more blissful in your body? What is an idealistic situation around integrating everything you've gone through over the past, I would say, maybe 10 years with multiple transits off the top of my head, around what's gone on behind the scenes, maybe mentally, your inner visions. And Neptune is starting its lengthy journey through your first house of self. So this is an interesting Neptune transit because Saturn is going to be joining Neptune next month in February of 2026. So some of you might be able to start thinking about, what do you want to dissolve, release regarding what no longer serves how you want to move through the world, how you want to take independent action, your appearance, your identity, how you want to feel in your physical body. So some of you might really start to contemplate, okay, what is no longer serving me? And what is no longer something that I feel or identify with? And you can sort of dissolve those outdated patterns, structures, and systems especially when Saturn starts to join Neptune in February next month, and start contemplating what you want to dissolve so that when Saturn starts to join Neptune next month, you can start to think about what you want to simultaneously rebuild that now does support the life that you want to live, how you want to feel in your body, and how you want to take independent action. I have a whole separate Neptune and Aries podcast episode that you can check out. I go into a lot more detail about what this means. So if you haven't checked that out already, I highly recommend it. It's also integrated within the 2026 year ahead. So if you have already purchased that, you don't have to worry about that. I already integrated that within the correct months that you have to be concerned about it. And the last thing I want to mention is that as Neptune enters your first house to really initiate that journey of potential dissolving and releasing of those outdated systems, and sort of getting you to maybe step into preparing yourselves for Saturn's ingress into your first house to strengthen, to increase your capacity, to start building that physical body, your capacity for more, your ability to take independent action. The ruler of your first house, that Neptune just entered this Aries first house, is Mars. So Neptune is now reporting to Mars, and Mars is about to start a new cycle with Pluto in your Aquarius 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. So this is interesting because Mars ruling Neptune now, ruling your first house. Some of you might start contemplating maybe what you want to dissolve and release that no longer supports you, how you want to feel in your physical body, how you want to take independent action in the world. But you might initiate this new story that could be unfolding over the next couple years with Mars and Pluto, where some of you might start to think about, well, who are the people that really support me? Who are the people that really play into the motivation, the desire, the plan of action around my long-term goals moving into 2026, 2027, and even into the beginning of 2028. Hey, Taurus Risings. So kicking off the month on January 6th, when we have a Venus Cassimi at 16 degrees. So Venus will be in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes on January 6th. And this could provide some clarity to your Capricorn 9th house of growth and potential. So maybe it's higher knowledge, continuing education, travel, spirituality, publishing, teaching. For those of you who have or know your chart and have your midheaven around 16 degrees of Capricorn, this could have very strong career, business, public recognition themes integrated within this clarity. So either way, what clarity could some of you be stepping into around your growth and potential that could also be career related? But this one's interesting because Venus rules your first house of self, the physical body. And so some of you might be gaining clarity around the growth and potential you really want to feel, the growth and potential you want to take independent action towards. Venus also rules your Libra 6th house of daily work and health routines. So some of you could also be gaining clarity around the work that you want to do, relationships with colleagues, coworkers, or gaining clarity around the routines that are going to support your work, but also the growth and potential that some of you are looking into in 2026. This could also be even health related. So Venus rules your first house of physical body, and it also rules your 6th house, which is also the area of health. So some of you could be gaining clarity around a health situation, the wellness you want to feel, the vitality you want to step into, the routines that are going to support that. And then as we move on to January 9th, that's when Mars will be Cassimi. So Mars will be in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes on January 9th. So again, this is happening in that Capricorn 9th house of growth and potential. That could be career related for some of you. But Mars rules your Scorpio 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. So some of you could gain clarity around your professional partnerships, the people that you want to connect with that could be a source of growth and potential in your lives. Some of you could also have clarity in your personal partnerships or connections that are providing some clarity or a source of clarity for the growth and potential that could be career related for some of you. Mars also rules your Aries 12th house of behind the scenes, subconscious thought patterns, dreams, solitude. So this one's interesting for Taurus risings because this clarity could come through moments of solitude, or it could come through your dreams, or just taking time alone to tune in and down. This clarity could also come from just working on something behind the scenes. Some of you might be gaining that clarity, and maybe with the 12th house connection, might not be ready to share it. So either way, I think a lot of you could be gaining clarity around your inner visions, your dreams, what's going on behind the scenes. That could also come up in private conversations behind the scenes with your closest long-term partnerships, whether they're personal or professional. So definitely pay attention to any of those areas and how it might be playing into some plan of action or clarity around the action, desire, or motivation around any of those particular themes regarding growth and potential that, again, could be career related for some of you. Then after these Cassimis take place, they start to apply to an opposition with Jupiter in your Cancer 3rd house of communication, exchanging information. So I think this opposition to the 3rd house, which can also be sort of your daily immediate environment, those people, places, and things, your daily movement through your environment, where some of you could really be gaining this clarity, but then the opposition might challenge you to say, okay, well, how can this be integrated within my daily task, my daily life, my daily movement, appointments, phone calls, errands, commutes, short distance travel, things going on with siblings, extended family. So this clarity this might be a time of clarity that ultimately requires a balance to what you need to take care of in terms of the mundane in that daily environment. If you work in publishing, teaching, communication fields, this could really highlight this axis, by the way. So if you work in any of those fields, like communication fields, even technology, transportation, you travel for work, you work in publishing, teaching, this could really provide clarity for those themes if they're prominent in your lives and having to balance that on this axis. Now, moving on to January 18th, we have this new moon at 28 degrees in that Capricorn 9th house. So it's interesting how these Casimis come along, this opposition to Jupiter, which requires some integration or balance to those third house areas I just mentioned. And then this new moon comes along at 28 degrees in that Capricorn 9th house of growth and potential. And I think this is when some of you might feel ready to really initiate that new chapter. After those moments of clarity, after figuring out how to balance or integrate. So this new moon could be a great time to plant those seeds. What do you want to cultivate in terms of your growth and potential? That could be career related over the next 5 or 6 months, that some of you might have gotten additional clarity or just a deeper understanding of where you want to take it and where you want to go. Then when we get to January 21st, that's when we have this Mercury Casimi at 1 degree. 1 degree? Degree or degrees? I don't know. Either way, this Mercury Casimi will be in your Aquarius 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So this is another potential moment of clarity in that area of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So perhaps the clarity around the growth and potential themes are now starting to shift into the career or what brings you fulfillment. What's interesting about this, though, is that Mercury rules your second house of earned income and self-worth. So this could be a moment for a lot of Taurus risings going into 2026 where maybe you're stepping into more clarity around your innate gifts, talents, your value, your self-worth. And it could have financial themes even tied into this clarity. Maybe some of you are getting clear on what you should be paid, what you do want to make, and setting those goals and getting very clear on that. Mercury also rules your 5th house of joy. So some of you might even get moments of clarity around how to maybe integrate more joy, creativity, and self-expression in what you do or what brings you fulfillment. Especially if you are an artist, you work in any type of creative field, this could provide a lot of clarity around your artistic self-expression, where you want to take it, how it's sort of providing some sense of clarity, and also how you can integrate your self-worth and your value into those things as well. Then we get to January 26th, and this is when Neptune makes its final ingress into your Aries 12th house of your subconscious thought patterns, dreams, solitude, behind the scenes stuff, more of a hidden house. And this is Neptune's final ingress. Neptune will not return back to Pisces for, another 150, 160 years or so. So definitely don't have to worry about that in our lifetime. But Neptune entering your 12th house, some of you might really start to step into that lengthy journey. Again, Neptune's going to be here for a while. But start stepping into that lengthy journey around maybe dissolving and releasing outdated systems, structures, or patterns around limiting beliefs, self-sabotage behavior, sort of the anxiety or insomnia, if that's something that resonates. So some of you could really start to dissolve sort of those mental thought patterns that really aren't ideal for you anymore. And there is a whole separate Neptune and Aries podcast episode that you can check out here on my platform, where I go into a lot more detail. I go through the years. So if you're interested in that, definitely check that out. But generally speaking, again, what do you want to dissolve, release? What mental thought patterns or mental structures no longer support the inner vision, your perceptions? And what's interesting about Neptune's ingress into Aries that I want to point out, closing out this month, is that the ruler of your Aries 12th house, and now the landlord or the ruler of Neptune is now reporting to Mars. So Mars rules your Aries 12th house. Neptune is now reporting to Mars. And Mars is applying to Pluto in your 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. Starting a new cycle. This is a new journey. This is a new story that can potentially unfold around your core motivations, desires, and actions regarding your career, your business, your public recognition. That some of you might kick off this Neptune in Aries transit by saying, well, the plan of action, what I really want out of what feels really fulfilling to me regarding career, business, public recognition. Some of you might start to initiate that journey of dissolving those outdated systems, structures, or dissolving and releasing those limiting beliefs or self-sabotage behavior around what's possible for you, what you really want to go after. So some of you might initiate sort of that mental thought pattern journey as Mars and Pluto are initiating a totally new story where Mars is going to continue going around your chart for the next couple years, playing out that story and that journey. So definitely see how you feel as you get closer to the end of January. You start closing out the month, especially because next month in February of 2026, Saturn is going to start joining Neptune here, helping maybe provide some structural component or sort of that, hey, what do you want to build now that some of you have initiated this new journey around your plan of action, what you really desire around what feels really fulfilling to you or what work feels more fulfilling to you, and sort of dissolving those outdated mental thought patterns or structures that really don't support that vision going into 2026, even into 2027, and in the beginning of 2028, when Mars will join with Pluto again and start a whole new cycle. Hi, Gemini Risings. Kicking off January of 2026 for Gemini Risings is really, really interesting. I've sat with this for a while, and on January 6th, there is this Venus Cassimi. And so Venus is going to be in the heart of the sun at 16 degrees, so within 17 minutes, but at 16 degrees, in your Capricorn 8th house of transformational work, transformational decisions, or those long-term financial themes like investments, assets, debt, loans, partners' resources. And so this could be a day of potential clarity around financial themes, resources, or transformational work, if that resonates. But what's interesting about this is that Venus rules your Libra 5th house of joy. So this could be clarity around like transformational work or financial management that somehow is allowing you to integrate more of what brings you joy. If you have children or you plan on having children, Venus ruling that 5th house where children land This could also play into transformational decisions or financial themes or resources that are playing into your children or planning for children, maybe. But what's particularly interesting about this Venus Cassimi for Gemini risings is that Venus also rules your Taurus 12th house of your subconscious thought patterns, your dreams, solitude, really behind the scenes stuff. And so some of you could be gaining clarity on something regarding a transformational decision, transformational work, or those financial themes behind the scenes. So some of you might be seeking solitude or working on something behind the scenes to step into that clarity around any transformational work, transformational decisions, or those financial themes. That could also be integrating maybe creative projects, your self-expression, children if applicable, or just really what brings you joy. Then when we get to January 9th, that's when Mars is Cassimi at 19 degrees. So within 17 minutes, but at 19 degrees in that Capricorn 8th house. So again, transformational work, transformational decisions, those long-term financial themes, including partners' resources. This is where I think things shift a little bit, where you had that Venus Cassimi, but now the Mars Cassimi could be providing clarity, yes, to transformational work, decisions, or long-term financial goals. But Mars rules your Aries 11th house of your social network and your long-term goals. So some of you could be gaining clarity around the people you want to surround yourselves with and those long-term goals that could be affecting financial goals, financial management, or themes, as well as transformational work. Mars also rules your Scorpio 6th house of daily work and health routines. So some of you could be gaining clarity around your work, your professional social network, your work goals, and how that's playing into maybe figuring out some financial situation or setting yourselves up for success regarding a financial situation, management, or resources. The 6th house is also health. So this could be a time where some of you are gaining clarity around your health, vitality you want to feel, and the transformational work or transformational decisions that's going to allow you to create the routines that set you up for success regarding more vitality going into 2026. So lots of options there. But shortly after this Cassimi takes place, Mars, the Sun, and Venus here are going to be in an opposition to Jupiter in your Cancer 2nd house of earned income and self-worth. So your other financial house. And so whatever clarity comes through, this could be an opportunity to start seeing how you can balance it with the expansion to your personal finances, what you're personally bringing in versus what you're paying off or investing. Some of you could also be looking at balancing your self-worth, your value, expanding upon that and finding ways to balance that with this clarity or direction moving forward in 2026. Then on January 18th, we have a new moon at 28 degrees in that Capricorn 8th house. Transformation, transformational decisions, those financial themes. So this new moon comes along after those Cassimis take place here. So whatever clarity or sense of balance that some of you are trying to integrate with that opposite house of self-worth and your personal finances and your values, this new moon comes along and I think is an opportunity for some Gemini risings to say, okay, these are the seeds I want to plant. This is the plan. These are the budgets, the management, the transformational work, whatever it is, whatever resonates. If it resonates, great. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. But either way, this could be a great time to initiate a new chapter that you want to cultivate regarding financial themes, financial things playing out over the next 5 or 6 months, or transformational work or transformational decisions after maybe some of you have gotten that clarity. So maybe the clarity came through or something happened and it shifted things. And now you're like, okay, this is the new chapter that I want to initiate here. Then when we get to January 21st, the Cassini train continues with a Mercury Cassini at 1 degree in your Aquarius 9th house of growth and potential. So growth and potential could include higher knowledge, continuing education, travel plans, spirituality, publishing, teaching for some of you. This could also be career related, even for some of you. Either way, this Cassini is, I think, important for Gemini risings because Mercury rules your Gemini first house of the self, the physical body, how you take independent action. So some of you could gain some sense of clarity or having that aha moment around growth and potential that you really want to take action towards. That is fully in alignment with your identity and how you want to show up in the world. Mercury also rules your Virgo 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So some of you might be gaining clarity around the foundation of your lives, the relationships with family or people you live with, property, real estate, that can help support the growth and potential you want to cultivate in 2026. Moving on to January 26th, where I want to wrap up the month with Neptune's final ingress into your Aries 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. So your social network and your long-term goals. And Neptune will not go back into your Pisces 10th house. You've had a lengthy journey with Neptune through your Pisces 10th house of career, public recognition. And Neptune's not going to return back to Pisces for maybe another, 150, 160 years. Don't have to worry about it in our lifetime. And so Neptune's final ingress into your Aries 11th house could really kick off that journey of potentially releasing, dissolving outdated systems, structures, patterns that no longer support the personal or professional social network you want to move towards or supports your future. Some of you could also release and dissolve sort of outdated structures or patterns involving your long-term goals, where Saturn is going to start moving towards Neptune to join Neptune next month in February of 2026 to say, hey, okay, based off of what you released, you dissolved, how do we want to reconstruct or rebuild the long-term goals? The personal or professional social network that is going to support the life you want to live and support those long-term goals. So what I also want to point out is Neptune has now made its final ingress into a Mars-ruled area. Mars rules your Aries 11th house. So Neptune is now reporting to Mars. And Mars, at the time of Neptune's final ingress into a Mars-ruled area, Mars is joining Pluto in that Aquarius 9th house of growth and potential to initiate a new story to unfold over the next 2.5 years. So it's interesting how Neptune moves into this 11th house, really initiating that journey of dissolving outdated systems, structures, patterns around your social network, your long-term goals, where Saturn's going to join next month and start initiating that rebuilding process or strengthening process of aligning you to long-term goals, dreams, aspirations, or social network that's in full alignment to your ideal now, your new ideal. That Mars joining Pluto is initiating or potentially initiating this new cycle over the next couple years to unfold around your motivations, desires, and plan of action around the growth and potential that could be serving your long-term goals and people you want to surround yourselves with. Hi, Cancer Risings. On January 6th, we have this really interesting Venus Cassini at 16 degrees. So Venus will be in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes on January 6th. But this Venus Cassini is potential clarity that could show up in your connections with others. It could also show up in your personal or professional partnerships, including marriage. Now, Venus rules your Taurus 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. So some of you might gain clarity around a particular connection or partnership. This could be personal or professional, by the way, but some of you could gain clarity around maybe certain aspects of your partnerships or certain connections that are in alignment to your long-term goals, your dreams, your aspirations. And some of you could also gain clarity around the personal and or professional social network that's in alignment to the connections you really want to cultivate in 2026. So definitely pay attention to the area of your long-term partnerships, whether they're personal or professional, and the connections you want to attract even in 2026 that could be playing into long-term goals and your social network. Now, the other area to pay attention to is Venus also ruling your 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So some of you might gain clarity around relationships with family, the foundation even that's going to fully support you, renovations, relocations, again, any home, family, property, real estate themes that could be a source of inspiration or clarity within your partnerships or the partnerships you want to attract. So some of you might be going into 2026 looking at the foundation of your lives and maybe getting clarity on what needs to be tweaked or changed in order to support and cultivate more of those connections you really want to pour into or attract, as well as that foundation that's going to support the long-term goals and personal or professional social networks. Now moving on to January 9th, Mars Cassimi in that Capricorn 7th house of personal and or professional partnerships, including marriage. So this Mars Cassimi comes along at 19 degrees in your Capricorn 7th house, again, within 17 minutes of the sun on January 9th. And this could, again, provide additional clarity regarding personal, professional partnerships or the connections you want to make. But this time, Mars rules your 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So for some of you, this clarity could come through business partnerships, or some of you might be gaining clarity around the business partnerships you want to cultivate and how to do that. But Mars also rules your Scorpio 5th house of joy, which could include creativity, self-expression, romance, children, if applicable. So personally, if you have children, you're partnered up, this could provide clarity around children or something playing out regarding your children within your partnership. But if you're sort of more of a creative or focusing more on your self-expression, this could provide clarity around your creative self-expression, your creative projects, your artistic pursuits, really anything that's going to bring you joy. But this also has the potential to provide clarity on what brings you joy, what is your heart's desire, and how is that playing out within your current long-term partnerships, how to maybe cultivate that more within your long-term partnerships or the partnerships you want to attract that's in alignment to your joy and your heart's desire moving into 2026. Then right after Mars Cassimi, Mars, the Sun, and Venus will be in or applying to an opposition to Jupiter in your 1st house. So whatever clarity comes through going into the first week of January, it could require that oppositional energy to balance it with the expansion of yourselves, the expansion of, feeling how you want to feel in your body, how you want to take independent action. So the clarity that comes through could require integration or balance to your needs. What brings you joy? How do you want to expand in the world? And maybe balancing your needs versus the needs of others could also be a common theme for some of you around this time. Now moving on to January 18th, we have this new moon at 28 degrees in your Capricorn 7th house of personal and professional partnership, including marriage. So this Capricorn 7th house is getting lit up going into 2026. But this new moon comes along, and generally speaking, this could be a good time to set those new intentions, new ideas. What do you want to cultivate within your current personal or professional partnerships, or the partnerships you want to attract? And if you think about it, we just had a couple Casimis in this area, potentially providing some clarity. So some of you might have gotten that clarity, had a moment to try to balance it with your needs, how you want to move through the world, how you want to expand through the world. And the new moon comes along, and I think that could be a time where after that clarity or integration that some of you have sort of gone through in the first week of January, now you can integrate that within that new chapter around anything you want to cultivate within personal and or professional partnerships over the next 5-6 months. Then we get to January 21st. And this is where the Casimi train continues, because Mercury will be Casimi at 1 degree in your Aquarius 8th house of transformational work, transformational decisions, as well as any long-term financial themes such as investments, assets, debt, loans, resources, partners' resources, if applicable. So some of you could be gaining clarity around a financial situation or through transformational work, or gaining clarity on a transformational decision around this time. Either way, Mercury rules your Gemini 12th house of your subconscious thought patterns, solitude, dreams, really behind the scenes stuff in your lives. And this could indicate that maybe some of you are seeking more solitude, some time alone, kind of to tune in and down, to tap into a sense of clarity around the financial situation or the transformational work or transformational decision. Or some of you might have been sort of ruminating in an inner vision. What have you been working on behind the scenes? And now maybe you're starting to consider the investment or the financial aspect of it. Mercury also rules your Virgo 3rd house of communication, exchanging information. Now, if you work in communication fields, or you work with technology, transportation, this could bring up financial themes or investments or such in regarding those themes. Now, personally, with Mercury ruling your Virgo 3rd house of communication, exchanging information, this could indicate that clarity could come through your conversations. It could come through exchanging information. It could come through those people in your everyday immediate environment, even siblings or extended family. So definitely pay attention to your communication, your conversations, exchanging information. That could be a source of clarity around a financial situation, resources, transformational work, or transformational decisions. I want to close out the month with Neptune's ingress into your Aries 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment on January 26th. So January 26th, Neptune is going to make its final ingress. It is no longer going to return to your Pisces 9th house for maybe another 150, 160 years. So you definitely don't have to worry about it this time. So Neptune's final ingress into your Aries 10th house. This could really kick off that official journey of Neptune going through your 10th house of dissolving or releasing outdated systems, structures, patterns around your career, your business, your public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. For when next month, when Saturn starts to join Neptune in your Aries 10th house, Saturn comes along and says, okay, what do you want to rebuild? What do you want to strengthen? What new container do you need based off of what no longer serves? So this Neptune into Aries, there is a whole separate podcast episode where I go into a lot more detail about the transits, and I go into many years ahead with Neptune and Aries. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely check that out. But generally speaking, again, start thinking about, what do you want to release? What do you want to dissolve? What no longer serves your career, your business, your public recognition? So when Saturn starts going into this 10th house area of yours starting next month, February 2026, you can start really building the visibility, the fulfillment, the career, the business that does support you at this juncture in your lives. Also keep in mind that the last thing I want to point out with Neptune entering your Aries 10th house is that Neptune has now entered a Mars-ruled area. Mars rules your Aries 10th house. And so Neptune is now reporting to Mars. And at the time of Neptune's final ingress into this Aries 10th house, this Mars-ruled area, Mars is joining Pluto in your Aquarius 8th house of transformation, long-term financial goals, resources, partners' resources, if applicable. And so this is Mars starting a new cycle, a new story that could really be unfolding for some of you over the next 2.5 years. And so Neptune is initiating that, hey, what do you want to release? What do you want to dissolve? What no longer serves? So that we can rebuild and step into that container, or, reach the top of the mountain regarding what we really feel is ideal regarding the career, the business, the public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. And Mars is initiating a new cycle with Pluto in this Aquarius 8th house, which could be playing into Neptune's ingress into your 10th house, where Mars joining Pluto in that 8th house could be unfolding a new story around your finances, your long-term financial goals, your long-term financial management, transformational decisions, or transformational work that could be playing into the career, the business, the public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment themes over the next couple years. Hi, Leo Risings. So January 6th, we have a Venus Cassimi at 16 degrees. So it will be within 17 minutes of the heart of the sun on January 6th, but it will be at 16 degrees. And this Venus Cassimi could be a moment of clarity, definitely in the department of those 6th house themes, including health, wellness, your daily work, your routines. So definitely pay attention to what clarity could come through that is a source of inspiration or clarity for your health, your wellness, or your work, or the routines that are going to support your work and your health. Now, taking it a little bit more specific, Venus does rule your Taurus 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So some of you could be definitely getting clarity on the work you want to do, projects, clarity on the people you want to work with. Because the 6th house, I do include coworkers and colleagues in this area. So this has really strong career, business, public recognition, your daily work routines, that you could be gaining a sense of clarity or this aha moment around the direction you really want to take, or the people you really want to work with, or the projects you really want to initiate going into 2026. If career is not a theme at this juncture in your lives, then this could definitely bring clarity around what feels fulfilling to you, or if you live a very visible life, this could provide clarity around your visibility or what feels fulfilling to you and the routines that could even support those things. Venus also rules your Libra 3rd house of communication, exchanging information, really what I consider, your daily movement, those people, places, and things within your everyday environment. So if you work in communication fields, or you work with technology, transportation, short distance travel, this could also provide additional clarity to those areas and that type of work. If it's personal, this could be sort of clarity around relationships with siblings, extended family, neighbors, people in your everyday immediate environment that could be providing you clarity around, your routines. So this could also play a part in providing clarity around what's going on in your everyday immediate environment and its impacts to your routines, and getting clear on that to set your routines up for success for your work, for your health, your vitality, and for some of you, even your career. Now, moving on to January 9th, we have a Mars Cassimi. So again, Mars will be in the heart of the sun or within 17 minutes at 19 degrees in your Capricorn 6th house of daily work and health routines. Mars is still exalted here. Very powerful, very potent Mars. And then Mars Cassimi, so a moment of clarity. That Mars could be providing clarity around your motivation, your desire, or your plan of action around your health, your wellness, your work, and your routines. But Mars does rule your Scorpio 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So some of you might really be gaining clarity around the foundation that's going to support your health, the foundation that's going to support your routines and your daily work. Mars also rules your Aries 9th house of growth and potential. So some of you could really be gaining clarity around the routines that can provide more growth and potential, or the growth and potential you want to pursue in 2026. Or some of you could be gaining clarity around the travel, the spirituality, the higher knowledge, the publishing, the teaching. Again, any growth and potential themes that you could be gaining clarity on that you want to maybe integrate into your daily work or your routines. After Mars goes Cassimi, we're really going to have Mars, the Sun, and Venus in some form or applying or already opposing Jupiter in your Cancer 12th house of subconscious thought patterns, sleep, solitude, behind the scenes stuff. So whatever clarity comes through or potentially comes through around the first week of January, some of you might really be trying to integrate it or balance it with needing time alone, needing to sleep, focusing on your inner vision, your perceptions, your mental thought patterns. So sometimes when we get clarity, we have to check in and integrate it within our mental thought patterns. Are there limiting beliefs there? Are there any lingering self-sabotaging thought patterns that are sort of in a tug of war with the clarity that you're getting? So definitely pay attention to the clarity and find ways to integrate it within your subconscious thought patterns, or taking time alone to kind of tune in and down to sort of see how you feel, how you can work through it so that it can help expand your mental thought patterns, your inner vision that could become a tangible reality moving into 2026 around your work, your health, and your routines. Now, getting to January 18th, we have a new moon at 28 degrees in your Capricorn 6th house of daily work and health routines. So again, we've just had a couple Cassimis and an opposition. What came up the first couple weeks of January? How are you balancing your mind and your body, your work, your health, your routines? That this new moon comes along and says, hey, based off that clarity or where you really want to go with these themes in 2026, let's start a new chapter. Let's plant those seeds and cultivate the work, the health, and the routines over the next 5 or 6 months. Then moving on to January 21st, the Cassimi train continues with a Mercury Cassimi at 1 degree in your Aquarius 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. So this could provide clarity to your current partnerships or the partnerships you want to attract, or there could be really enlightening conversations or communication within your current long-term partnerships that's providing you clarity to Mercury-ruled areas, such as your second house of earned income, self-worth, and your Gemini 11th house of your social network and your long-term goals. So some of you could be gaining clarity on the people you want to surround yourselves with, your long-term goals, your finances, your self-worth, and that could be sort of playing a part or providing you additional clarity to how you want to integrate that within your current partnerships. Or your partnerships can be a source of inspiration or clarity to the people you want to surround yourselves with, your long-term goals, your finances, and your self-worth. So definitely pay attention to communication or conversation that could be going on with your connections with others. Some of you could even gain clarity around the connections you want to attract in 2026 that are in alignment to your value system, your self-worth, and your long-term goals. I want to close out the month on January 26th when Neptune makes its final ingress into your Aries 9th house of growth and potential. So some growth and potential themes with the 9th house, bigger picture. We're talking higher knowledge, continuing education, spirituality, travel, publishing, teaching. Some growth and potential themes that I didn't even list, but are growth and potential to you that could even be career related are on the table with this. But Neptune's final ingress into your Aries 9th house is really, I think, kicking off that journey of dissolving and releasing outdated systems, structures, patterns that no longer support your growth and potential, no longer are maybe in alignment to your beliefs, your truth. And Saturn is going to join Neptune next month in February of 2026. And that's where I think Saturn's going to come along and say, hey, let's rebuild, let's create the container that does support your ideal growth and potential in your lives. I also want to point out that this Neptune has just entered a Mars-ruled area. So Mars rules your Aries 9th house, and Neptune is now reporting to Mars. And Mars is applying to Pluto in your 7th house of personal and or professional partnerships at the time of Neptune's ingress into a Mars-ruled area. Mars joining Pluto is creating a new story, a new something that can unfold over the next 2.5 years. That could very well be sort of something unfolding within your current personal or professional partnership, sort of creating a new chapter. And even creating a new chapter around the partnerships you do want to attract that play into or are in alignment to your actions, motivations, and desires regarding your ideal growth and potential in your lives. So some of you could really start to see a new story unfold in addition to Neptune moving into that Mars-ruled area, helping sort of dissolve the outdated, dissolve what no longer serves in terms of growth and potential, stepping into maybe more truth and belief, aligning yourselves to that. And Mars really creating a new story for some of you that could unfold over the next 2.5 years. If you haven't checked out my Neptune and Aries podcast episode, I highly recommend that. I go into a lot more detail over the next couple years, specific transits, all of that, and its impacts to your Aries 9th house. Hi, Virgo Risings. On January 6th, we have a Venus Cassimi at 16 degrees in your Capricorn 5th house. So this Venus Cassimi will be in the heart of the sun, so within 17 minutes, but at the 16 degree mark in your Capricorn 5th house of joy. So this could be creativity, self-expression, romance, children, if applicable, really anything that specifically brings you joy or is really your heart's desire around this time. Those themes I would pay attention to because this Venus Cassimi could provide some sort of clarity or inspiration to those areas. And Venus rules your Libra 2nd house of earned income and self-worth. So some of you might gain clarity around a financial situation and how it's impacting or how it could provide more joy, more creativity, more self-expression. Just maybe for some of you, just you want to go into 2026 experiencing more joy, just enjoying life more, or time with your children, if that's applicable. So really there's a lot on the table here, but it's in the 5th house, which is, a fun house. And with Venus ruling that Libra 2nd house of earned income or self-worth, I think some of you could gain clarity around your self-worth, your value, or your finances, and how it can support your joy, your heart's desire. Again, maybe it's creativity, self-expression, romance, children. And Venus also rules your Taurus 9th house of growth and potential. So this is really interesting for Virgo risings, because this Venus Cassimi potentially integrating your Taurus 9th house themes of higher knowledge, travel, spirituality. Some of you, it could be publishing, teaching, or career related. It could provide clarity around some growth and potential themes and how to maybe integrate more joy within them. So some of you might really be looking at, obtaining more knowledge, creating more spiritual knowledge, or traveling. Again, any growth and potential themes that feel joyful for you, that feel good for you, or they're supporting more joy in your lives. And this, honestly, some of you, if I'm being completely honest, some of you might be looking into travel plans or continuing education or something along the lines, because Venus ruling your 2nd house of earned income and your 9th house of travel, knowledge, all that stuff. It kind of screams what clarity are you gaining around wanting to enjoy life more, and maybe seeking more knowledge or seeking more travel and gaining clarity around your finances in order to do it. So some of you, it could be that is a potential. That's just something that is kind of jumping out at me for this Venus Cassimi. Anyways, moving on to January 9th. So January 9th is when we have the Mars Cassimi at 19 degrees. Again, within 17 minutes of the sun, but still at that 19 degree mark in your Capricorn 5th house of joy. So again, creativity, self-expression, maybe it's romantic situations or children, if applicable to you. Either way, this is an additional moment of clarity, but this time it has that Mars flavor to it. And Mars is exalted. So this is a very potent Mars. So I think this Cassimi has more potency, or maybe more of you will feel this Cassimi. Either way, Mars rules your Aries 8th house of transformational work, transformational decisions, and long-term financial themes such as investments, assets, debt, loans, partners' resources, if applicable. So this is where some of you might be gaining clarity around financial themes, additional financial themes, or transformational decisions or transformational work that's bringing more clarity to what brings you joy, how you can integrate more enjoyment into your lives moving into 2026. Especially, for some of you, the past couple of years, you've had a lot of angular stuff. You've had the eclipses that you're finishing off in those angular houses. So a lot of Virgo risings, you've gone through quite a bit the past couple of years, especially with Saturn going through your Pisces 7th house. So this could be a moment where some of you are really looking at your financial situation, what you're immediately bringing in versus what you're paying off or investing in, and how you can sort of look at both of those financial worlds and find a way to support your creativity, your self-expression, and just enjoying life more. Or some of you might be looking at transformational work and your self-worth and sort of making those transformational decisions to actively integrate more joy into your lives in 2026. So I think this is going to be really interesting for a lot of Virgo risings really going into 2026. I feel like a lot of people, it's that typical, New Year's resolutions, let's lose weight, let's be really healthy, let's focus on this. But I actually think Virgo risings, like a lot of you are going to go into 2026 and you're like, I just want more peace. I just want more enjoyment. I want to build the life that I'll love and really start focusing on my heart's desire and just start feeling more joyful again. So if that's the case, I hope that's the case for you, because with these Casimis taking place and kicking off 2026 in this 5th house of joy, it's also technically by sign trine your 1st house of self. So it can also really be supportive in creating energy and flow to your identity, how you want to show up in the world, your physical body. And it's also in flow to that Taurus 9th house of growth and potential. So how can joy actually create more flow to you feeling good in your body and taking independent action and moving through the world, but also creating flow and energy to the growth and potential you potentially want to cultivate in 2026. So I love it. I like it. But after this moment of clarity, this is when it's going to either already be opposing or applying to an opposition to Jupiter in your Cancer 11th house of your social network, which could be personal or professional, and your long-term goals. So whatever clarity you are getting, some of you might go through that, okay, well, how do I balance this with my long-term goals? How do I keep steady on my long-term goals while also integrating sort of what's going on with those 5th house themes, as well as maybe trying to balance it with expanding the social network or the social connections that are going to support the joy or the heart's desire, the creativity, the self-expression, etc. Help cultivate that in your lives in 2026. Then getting to January 18th, we have this new moon in your Capricorn 5th house. Again, so much 5th house stuff kicking off 2026, but I love it for Virgo risings. And this new moon is going to be at 28 degrees in that Capricorn 5th house of joy. So we just had a couple Casimis here and a pretty prominent opposition where this new moon comes along and says, okay, based off of what you've kind of sat with, maybe you've gained that sense of clarity or inspiration. And this new moon is like, okay, based off of what's happened the first couple weeks of January, where do you want to take this? How can we really officially start that new chapter or plant seeds to really cultivate what brings you joy? And that might be children. That might be romance, creativity, self-expression. So this could really help initiate that chapter after the first couple weeks of 2026, where some of you have been gaining clarity or inspiration or really ruminating in how to cultivate more enjoyment and pleasure in your lives. And for some of you after the past couple of years, like I mentioned, with all the angular stuff and the eclipses, I think some of you will be ready for it. Then getting to January 21st, we have the Casimi train continuing with a Mercury Casimi at 1 degree. But this Casimi at 1 degree with Mercury takes place in your Aquarius 6th house of daily work and or health routines. So I think this starts to shift things a little bit, specifically for Virgo risings, where I think now you're starting to think about the clarity or inspiration regarding the work that you want to do or the health and vitality you want to feel and the routines that are going to support that. So I think this is when things start to shift for Virgo risings, thinking about, okay, what's really going to support my health, my vitality, my physical body, especially with Mercury ruling your Virgo first house of the physical body, the self. So some of you might really be thinking about, okay, what's really going to support what routines, like gaining clarity around the routines that are going to support your physical body, how you want to feel in your body, your health, your vitality. And Mercury also rules your Gemini 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So some of you could be gaining clarity around the work that you want to do, the routines that are going to support your career, your business, your public recognition, and sort of where you really want to take that in 2026. Then I want to close out the month on January 26th, when Neptune makes its final ingress into your Aries 8th house of transformational work, transformational decisions, or those long-term financial themes like investments, assets, debt, loans, partners, resources, if applicable. So, excuse me. This is Neptune's final ingress. Neptune is not going to go back into Pisces again like it recently did. It's not actually going to go back into Pisces for, I don't know, another 150, 160 years. So not in our lifetime. You don't have to worry about Neptune and Pisces again. So Neptune's final ingress into your Aries 8th house could really start to initiate that journey of maybe dissolving outdated systems, structures, or patterns around long-term financial management or transformational work, is to really create a more ideal future around your financial future or your transformational work. Again, take what resonates, leave the rest. But what's interesting about Neptune's final ingress into your Aries 8th house, it has now entered a Mars-ruled area, right? Mars rules Aries, and that means that Neptune is now reporting to Mars. And Mars is applying to Pluto to create a new story to unfold, a new cycle, where Mars is now merging with Pluto in your Aquarius 6th house of daily work and or health routines, for some of you, to create potentially a new story that could unfold around your core motivations, desires, plan of action around the work, the health, the routines over roughly the next 2.5 years. That could also be playing into Neptune's initial or final ingress into that Aries 8th house of what transformational work could be playing into this new story around your health, your work, your routines, or what could be dissolving or being released around what no longer is your ideal or what no longer serves your financial future or long-term financial management and resources. That could be playing into maybe new goals, new desires and motivations around the work that you do and the routines that support that. So some of you could really be seeing this Neptune's ingress into your Aries 8th house, where a lot of you could be beginning a new story around your work, your health, and your routines that are playing into your financial future or the transformational work. And that could be playing out over the next couple years. Saturn is going to join Neptune next month in February 2026. So whatever could be you're maybe contemplating around what no longer serves you, what you want to release, what you want to dissolve, Saturn is going to eventually come along next month and I think help sort of create that structural component to what you do want to build, what is ideal regarding your long-term financial future or your resources. That could very well also still be playing into this Mars Pluto story that is initiating around this time and playing out over the next 2.5 years as Mars does a full loop around and I believe rejoins Pluto to create a new story, a new cycle, I believe early 2028. If you haven't checked out my Neptune and Aries podcast episode, I highly recommend that. I go into a lot more detail where I just focus on Neptune and Aries, some aspects, some transits over the years to come to kind of break that down and what that could mean for you. So definitely check that out if you haven't already, where that can explain that. If you've already purchased the 2026 year ahead, I've already integrated that podcast episode into the monthly portals where it is tied to certain Neptune transits. So you don't need to worry about that. But anyways, I hope Virgo risings are stepping into 2026, stepping into those Casimis in that 5th house of joy, where some of you can get more clear on the joy you want to feel, enjoying life more, and then using maybe these transits through your 6th house and your 8th house to create a more ideal financial future, any transformational work that can help support that ideal future, and the work and or health routines that are really going to support you in 2026. Hello, Libra Risings. So kicking off 2026 on January 6th, we have a Venus Cassimi at 16 degrees in your Capricorn 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So this Venus Cassimi will be in the heart of the sun or within 17 minutes, but still at that 16 degree mark. And this is in your 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So some of you could be gaining clarity or inspiration regarding home, family, property, real estate themes. What's, I think, important to point out about this Venus Cassimi in this area is that Venus rules your 1st house of the self, the physical body, how you take independent action, your identity, how you show up in the world. So for Libra risings, you might feel this more personally, and you might gain clarity or inspiration around maybe the home environment or relationships with particular family members or property and real estate themes that are going to foundationally support you, how you want to feel, and support your ability to take independent action throughout the world. Other things on the table with this Venus Cassimi is this Venus also rules your Taurus 8th house of transformational work, transformational decisions, and those long-term financial themes. So investments, assets, debt, loans, partners, resources. So some of you could be gaining clarity around a financial component that's playing into a property, real estate, relocation, renovation, redecoration. Or some of you could be gaining clarity around transformational decisions or transformational work that could also be playing a part in foundational family relationships or people you live with. Moving on to January 9th, we have a Mars Cassimi. So again, Mars will be in the heart of the sun or within 17 minutes, but it will be at that 19 degree mark in your Capricorn 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So again, another opportunity for clarity or even inspiration, where this Mars is still in its place of exaltation. So this is a very potent Mars. So some of us might feel the Mars Cassimi a little bit more. But what's interesting about this is that Mars rules your Scorpio 2nd house of earned income and self-worth. So some of you could be gaining clarity around your finances, your financial budgets, really financial themes, and its impacts to some plan, desire, or motivation regarding home, family, property, real estate. Mars ruling the Scorpio 2nd house, this is also the area of self-worth. So some of you could be gaining clarity around your value and your self-worth regarding something playing out with family, relationships with family, people you live with. And then lastly, Mars rules this Aries 7th house of personal and professional partnerships. So some of you may be gaining clarity on a very foundational level regarding something playing out within personal or professional partnerships, including marriage, or the partnerships you want to attract that are in alignment to this clarity around what you really need foundationally in your lives. After Mars goes Cassimi, really Mars, the Sun, and Venus will be pretty much in an opposition to Jupiter in your Cancer 10th house of career and public recognition. So whatever clarity comes through roughly through the first week of January, it could require some integration or balance to what could be expanding or the desire to expand your career, your business, your public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. Moving on to January 18th, we have a new moon at 28 degrees in your Capricorn 4th house of home, family, property, real estate. So again, we've just had a couple Cassimis here where moments of clarity or inspiration have played out really the first week of January, second week of January. And now this new moon comes along conveniently after that. And I think is saying, hey, based off of what's unfolded, the clarity, the inspiration, how can we integrate this into a new chapter or plant new seeds that you want to cultivate over the next 5 or 6 months? So this could be a great time to set new intentions, new chapters with maybe certain relationships with family or what you need foundationally. Again, property, real estate themes as well are on the table that you really want to cultivate over the next 5 or 6 months that really supports that clarity, inspiration, and really supports you foundationally in your lives. Then we get to January 21st, where we have Mercury Cassimi at 1 degree in your Aquarius 5th house of joy. So this could bring clarity around what brings you joy, your heart's desire. This could include creativity, self-expression, romance, children, if applicable to you. So some of you could be starting to transition into how you want to incorporate more joy, more of your heart's desire in your lives in 2026. And what's interesting about this is that Mercury rules your Virgo 12th house of your subconscious thought patterns, behind the scenes stuff, solitude, dreams. So some of you could be gaining clarity around sort of your mental thought patterns and its impacts to your joy, your creativity, your self-expression. And Mercury also rules your Gemini 9th house of growth and potential. So some of you could be gaining clarity around the growth and potential that's going to bring you the most joy moving forward. Growth and potential themes could include higher knowledge, spirituality, travel plans, publishing, teaching. Again, for some of you, this could be career related. I think especially if you're in like teaching, publishing, or creative fields, this could be providing some clarity around that creative self-expression or what's going to really bring you joy. Some of you, it might be as simple as just wanting to travel, having clarity of, I want more travel. I want more culture. I want more knowledge that way. That really brings me joy. So I'd pay attention to what really comes up mentally, especially with Mercury ruling that 12th house of subconscious thought patterns. So pay attention to your thought patterns, pay attention to your dreams, sort of like what comes up when you tune in and down when you're by yourselves. Even that could bring moments of clarity or clues around what could really bring you joy in 2026. That could even be playing into your growth and potential for some of you. Then I want to close out the month on January 26th. When Neptune makes its final ingress into your Aries 7th house of personal and or professional partnerships, including marriage. So this is Neptune's final ingress. Neptune is not going to return back to your Pisces 6th house, at least in your lifetime. So another 150, 160 years. And Neptune's final ingress into your Aries 7th house, I think, could really start to initiate that journey of releasing, dissolving outdated systems, structures, and patterns that really don't support your connections with others or support your current long-term partnerships. So some of you might be stepping into even new chapters within your long-term partnerships, whether they're personal or professional, and noticing like where old ways or old ideals are no longer really needed or they're not really supporting the ideal of where you want to go. So there's a lot on the table here. If you haven't checked out my Neptune and Aries podcast episode, I highly recommend that. I go into a lot more detail and I go through the transits and I go through many years to come. So definitely check that out. That I think will give you a lot more clarity and insight to this area. If you purchase the 2026 year ahead, you don't have to worry about that. It's already integrated within that portal and the months that are connected to Neptune and Aries. So again, you can start thinking about what you want to change, what's ideal, what no longer serves this area, so that when Saturn starts to join Neptune next month, February 2026, Saturn, I think, is going to come along and sort of help bring the structural components to rebuild what is that ideal. Additionally, the last thing I want to talk about with Neptune going into Aries is that Aries is ruled by Mars. And so Neptune is now reporting to Mars. And Mars is applying to Pluto to create a new story, a new cycle to unfold over the next 2.5 years in your 5th house of joy. So this could be, I think, for a lot of Libra risings, I think going into 2026, again, take what resonates, leave the rest. But I think with Neptune entering a Mars-ruled area and Mars is creating a new cycle with Pluto in that 5th house of joy, some of you might be not only releasing outdated systems, structures, and patterns that no longer serve the connections you do want to have or attract into your lives, but also releasing those outdated systems, structures, and patterns within your current partnerships, if that's applicable, whether they're personal or professional, so that when Mars creates a new story to unfold, a new cycle with Pluto in this 5th house of joy, maybe the next 2.5 years will be a story unfolding on how to integrate more joy, more creativity, more self-expression, or romance within those partnerships over the next 2.5 years. Hello, Scorpio Risings. So kicking off 2026, on January 6th, we have this Venus Cassimi at 16 degrees. So Venus will be in the heart of the sun or within 17 minutes, but it will be at the 16 degree mark in your Capricorn 3rd house of communication, exchanging information, siblings, extended family, technology, transportation. So I kind of like to compartmentalize the 3rd house to hopefully help people understand it a little bit more. So if you work in professional fields that involve communication, technology, transportation, short distance travel, this could definitely bring up those themes, providing clarity, insight, inspiration. But this could also be personal. So it could be your personal communication, exchanging information, your daily movement, and things within your immediate everyday environment, as well as, relationships with siblings, extended family, or just home and family for some of you, depending on the angles of your chart. Clarity could come through there. But more specifically, Venus rules your Libra 12th house of subconscious thought patterns, also just more behind the scenes stuff like dreams, solitude. And this could indicate that there could be sort of private conversations or behind the scenes conversations that could be providing you clarity. Some of you might be communicating stuff that's going on with mental thought patterns and gaining clarity or insight around those themes. But Venus also rules your Taurus 7th house of personal and or professional partnerships, including marriage. So this could also just be communication, exchanging information, maybe it's appointments, tasks, errands, phone calls, appointments that could be playing into a personal or professional partnership, sort of getting stuff done there, where you're gaining clarity on what needs to be done, or gaining clarity with a conversation or communication with personal or professional partnerships. So again, this is in the arena of your everyday immediate environment. So for some of you, it could be very mundane and personal, or it could be more professional, depending on, what resonates around this time. But also pay attention to your connections with others, your long-term partnerships, and how it could be impacting those, or those could be the source of clarity or inspiration regarding a connection, a conversation, etc. Now, moving on to January 9th, we have the Mars Cassimi. Again, Mars in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes, but the Mars Cassimi will be at the 19 degree mark in that Capricorn 3rd house. So again, this could be another source of movement, communication, exchanging information, situations playing out with siblings, extended family, or for some of you in the professional fields involving communication, technology, transportation. This could be another source of clarity, inspiration. This Mars is still exalted, so this one might be felt a little bit more, especially for Scorpio risings, because Mars rules your first house of the physical body and the self. So the Mars Cassini could be a really opportunistic time for some Scorpio risings to gain clarity, inspiration around a plan of action, desire, and motivation that supports you, supports your physical body, supports how you want to move through the world. And some of you might be looking at those people, places, and things within your everyday immediate environment and seeing what you need to take care of, gaining clarity on what needs to be done, how you want to feel and move through your everyday world, and how that impacts how you feel in your body and your ability to take independent action. Mars also rules your Aries 6th house of daily work and health routines. So some of you could definitely be looking at sort of, your appointments, your commute, communication, things going on with siblings, extended family. Again, those daily movement, people, places, and things within your everyday immediate environment that impacts your routines, that impacts your work, that impacts your health. So some of you could gain a lot of clarity around your work, coworkers, colleagues, your overall health, vitality, the routines that are going to support that. But some of you could really be looking at just sort of the mundane everyday life and sort of gaining clarity around how you want to feel and operate within that environment that supports those routines and your work and your health, etc. Now, after Mars goes Cassini, Mars is pretty much going to, as well as Venus and the Sun, are going to be pretty much in an opposition with Jupiter in your Cancer 9th house. So whatever clarity, inspiration comes through the first week of January, but it might need to be integrated with the expansion some of you want, with the growth and potential. So I like to think of this opposition, especially with the Cassinis, as maybe the clarity and the inspiration needs to be integrated with Jupiter in the 9th house, where it's sort of an invitation to say, okay, what's going on in sort of your immediate everyday life, and the clarity that might be coming through that has impacts to you, impacts to your work, your health, your routines. But also, how can we integrate that to stay open-minded, or also stay focused on the bigger picture, the growth and potential, the bigger picture on where you're headed. So for some of you, this might require balance between like not getting the analysis paralysis, not getting so hyper fixated on, the nitty-gritty details of what's happening right now. Like, also remind yourselves to think about the impacts it can have to the bigger picture, where you really want to go, and how sort of one step at a time can sort of lead to that expansive, bigger picture. Or some of you could also be really focused on how these immediate things in your immediate environment that could be impacting your work or your health or your routines could also be setting you up for success and be integrated to support your overall growth and potential and where you want to go in 2026. Now, January 18th, we have a new moon in your Capricorn 3rd house of communication, exchanging information. So let me just get this lined up if you're watching. Okay. So this new moon in your Capricorn 3rd house is going to be at 28 degrees. And so remember, we just had a couple Cassinis here in an opposition. So what clarity came through? What inspiration? What is going on at this juncture where this new moon comes along and says, okay, based off of what's unfolded the past couple weeks, how do we want to integrate that within this new chapter, these new ideas that you maybe want to cultivate over the coming months in 2026? Where for you, it's really starting with, your immediate environment, your communication, you're exchanging information, setting sort of new intentions around maybe relationships with siblings, extended family, how you want to move and operate within your everyday environment. And maybe even setting new chapters with those things like technology, transportation, short distance travel, anything in those themes or realms that you want to initiate a new chapter in, that the past couple weeks provided some clarity, some change, some insight that now you want to integrate and cultivate with those seeds. So moving on to January 21st, we have the last Kasimi this month, where there's going to be a Mercury Kasimi. So again, Mercury in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes, but it will be at the 1 degree mark in your Aquarius 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So this could be moments of clarity that could definitely play out with relationships with family, home, property, real estate themes. However, Mercury rules your Gemini 8th house of transformational work, as well as those long-term financial themes. So investments, assets, debt, loans, partners, resources. So this could be a moment for some Scorpio risings where you're gaining some sense of clarity around a long-term financial goal, long-term financial management, partners, resources, and its impacts to maybe what you want to play out regarding home, family, property, and real estate. So some of you looking to, purchase property or deal with real estate, renovations, relocations. This could be a source of inspiration or clarity around the financial situation, what's possible, where do you want to go with it. With Mercury ruling the 8th house, which also includes the transformational work, if it resonates, some of you might be dealing with transformational decisions or transformational work that's providing some sense of clarity around the people you live with or certain relationships with family. The other areas to look out for with this Mercury Kasimi is Mercury also rules your Virgo 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. So some of you may gain clarity around the foundation that's really going to support your long-term goals, your dreams, your aspirations. Some of you might also gain clarity around the foundation that's going to support the people, support the social network you want to surround yourselves with, or vice versa. Then I want to close out the month on January 26th when we have Neptune making its final ingress into your Aries 6th house of daily work and health routines. So this is Neptune's final ingress. You don't have to worry about Neptune returning back to your Pisces 5th house for another, 150, 160 years. So definitely not in our lifetime. So this is really Neptune's final ingress. What's really initiating or could be starting to unfold over many years to come. And Neptune's going to be here for a while. So Neptune entering your Aries 6th house, this could really initiate some signs of maybe wanting to dissolve outdated systems, structures, and patterns around your routines that really don't support the work that you want to do. So some of you might be really starting to feel the dissolving effects around the work that you just don't feel is ideal anymore. Or some of you might start to sort of dissolve those outdated systems and patterns around the work that you do that just doesn't support it anymore. So some of you could be shifting into this transition period of deciphering what you want to hold on to versus what you want to release around your work, your health, your vitality that really doesn't support you. So that when Saturn applies to this Neptune next month, so February 2026, Saturn, I think, is going to help sort of create some structural component to what you do want to build. Now, I have a whole separate podcast episode on just Neptune and Aries. So definitely check that out if you haven't, where I go into a lot more detail, more of the transits over many years to come. If you purchase the 2026 year ahead, you don't have to worry about that. It's already integrated within the months that it's connected to. So don't have to worry about that. The last thing I want to point out about Neptune entering your Aries 6th house is that Neptune has now entered a Mars-ruled area. Mars rules Aries. And so Neptune is now reporting to Mars. And Mars is now joining Pluto in your Aquarius 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate, starting a new cycle. So Mars is it's joining Pluto, saying, okay, what's the story? What's the situation? And Mars is going to continue on interacting with Pluto over the next 2.5 years, sort of playing out this journey, playing out this potential story for some of you. Again, take what resonates, leave the rest. But I think it's interesting how Neptune has entered a Mars-ruled area. Neptune entering your daily work and health routines, where some of you might be initiating sort of a new story to unfold around home, family, property, real estate themes. What are your core motivations, desires, plan of action that could be playing a part in this story unfolding over the next 2.5 years, that could be playing into Neptune's effects on potentially getting some of you to think about what is your ideal health, vitality, work you want to do, and routines that are going to support that. Hello, Sagittarius Risings. So kicking off 2026 on January 6th, we have this Venus Cassimi at 16 degrees. So Venus will be in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes, but it will be at this 16-degree mark in your Capricorn 2nd house of earned income and self-worth. So this is interesting because it's in a financial house, but also really like your value systems, your self-worth, where Venus rules your Taurus 6th house of daily work and health routines. So some of you could be gaining clarity or inspiration around the work you want to do, the health and vitality that you want to feel, and its direct impacts to your self-worth and your value. Some of you, this could be a work financial situation. So some of you could be gaining clarity on finances or financial budgets or just a financial situation that could be playing into the work that you do. But Venus also rules your Libra 11th house of your social network, which could be personal or professional, but also your long-term goals. So some of you could be gaining clarity on your financial long-term goals. Some of you could be gaining clarity on your social network, who you want to surround yourselves with that's fully in alignment to your self-worth and your value. But some of you could also be even gaining clarity on financial budgets or financial tools that could support your long-term goals. So definitely pay attention to any of those themes on January 6th. Moving on to January 9th, we have the next Cassimi. So we have a Mars Cassimi, again, Mars in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes, but it will be at this 19-degree mark in that Capricorn 2nd house of earned income and self-worth again. So another opportunity for clarity, inspiration, insight to financial situations, self-worth, and this Mars is still exalted. So this, I think, packs a little bit more punch in the Cassimi department. And this Mars rules your Aries 5th house of joy, creativity, self-expression, romance, children, if applicable to you. Some of you with your IC in your Aries 5th house, this could also have home, family, property, real estate themes integrated within this, if you know that. But either way, this Mars Cassimi could provide clarity to situations playing out with your children, clarity regarding what really brings you joy, what is your heart's desire moving into 2026? And also, if you're a creative, this could even provide clarity or insight to your creative process, your artistic pursuits, your self-expression, and maybe even clarity regarding the finances that fund that support that, etc. Now, Mars also rules your Scorpio 12th house, your subconscious thought patterns, your sleep, dreams, solitude. So some of you might actually be gaining the clarity and the insight in solitude. Pay attention to your dreams. Pay attention to what's going on behind the scenes, because for some of you, that could be the space or the place for you to gain this clarity and insight to the second house of earned income and or self-worth, and its impacts to that Aries 5th house of joy, creativity, children, if applicable to you as well. Now, after Mars goes Cassimi, we really have Mars, the Sun, and Venus in some either applying or already in an opposition to Jupiter in your Cancer 8th house of transformational work, transformational decisions, and those long-term financial themes like investments, assets, debt, loans, partners, resources, if applicable. So whatever clarity comes through for some of you, definitely in that financial department or self-worth, it might be a time to integrate or balance the expansion of the long-term financial goals or long-term financial themes, or integrating what's going on with a partner's resources, if applicable. Some of you could also be sort of balancing your self-worth as well as transformational work, if that resonates around this time. But the second and the 8th house is sort of like what's yours versus what's others. And so this could be definitely bringing up strong financial themes for a lot of Sagittarius risings around this time, but we're dealing with Cassimi. So what clarity and insight is coming through that's now having you look at how to balance these two areas. Going to January 18th, we have a new moon in your Capricorn second house of earned income and self-worth. This new moon will be at 28 degrees. So we just had a couple Cassimis here and a pretty strong opposition with Jupiter in that 8th house. So what has unfolded at this point, the first couple weeks of January, where some of you have gained clarity, insight, inspiration, maybe with the financial situation, the self-worth, maybe it's something going on with your children, or just what brings you joy, your creativity, your self-expression, any of those themes. That now this new moon comes along and says, based off of what's unfolded in the past couple weeks, what new seeds do you want to plant to cultivate over the coming months? What new chapters or ideas do you want to set, particularly around your self-worth or your finances, to cultivate what clarity, inspiration, or insight some of you received over the past couple weeks? Then on January 21st, this Cassimi train continues with Mercury Cassimi at 1 degree in your Aquarius 3rd house of communication, exchanging information, siblings, extended family. This could be professional if you work in communication fields or with technology, transportation, short distance travel, or this could be personal through more of the siblings, the extended family, people in your everyday environment. So this Mercury Cassimi could definitely provide clarity and insight through communication, through conversations, what's going on in your everyday immediate environment. That could be a source of inspiration, a source of clarity, where Mercury rules your Virgo 10th house of career, public recognition, business, or what brings you fulfillment. So some of you could be gaining clarity around maybe exchanging information, communication themes, situations with siblings, extended family that could provide additional insight to your work, your career, your business, your public recognition, or what feels more fulfilling to you going into 2026. Mercury also rules your Gemini 7th house of personal and professional partnerships. So some of you could be gaining clarity through conversations or communication with your closest loved ones, your closest personal or professional partnerships. Mercury could also be providing insight for the connections, the personal or professional connections you do want to make in 2026. That could simultaneously help support what feels more fulfilling to you or support the career, the business, the public recognition goals going into 2026. Then I want to close out the month on January 26 when Neptune makes its final ingress into your Aries 5th house of joy, creativity, self-expression, children, if applicable. So this is Neptune's final ingress. Neptune is not going to return back to Pisces for roughly another 150, 160 years. So not in our lifetime. And Neptune's final ingress into Aries could, generally speaking, could really start to initiate that journey of dissolving outdated systems, structures, and patterns around what no longer serves your joy, no longer serves your creativity, no longer serves, for some of you, if you know your natal chart and your IC is in the beginning degrees of Aries, this could definitely help dissolve outdated systems, structures, and patterns that no longer support the home environment, the family, the property, the real estate, those structural components that aren't ideal for you anymore. They just don't serve you anymore. So some Sagittarius risings, if your IC is in the beginning degrees of Aries, you could be shifting into a new chapter in your lives where you're stepping into creating something that's much more ideal for you. And because it's in the 5th, regardless if your IC is in your 5th or not, this could be a time of really creating more of an ideal life or an ideal situation that feels a lot more joyful for you. Now, Saturn is going to be joining Neptune here next month in February of 2026 to, I think, help create or bring some structural components to what some of you might be dissolving or sort of thinking about in terms of what's more ideal for you. So Saturn will be joining there, and I'll get into that next month. But Neptune has just entered a Mars-ruled area, right? Mars rules Aries. So Neptune is now reporting to Mars, and Mars is joining Pluto at the time of Neptune's ingress into this Mars-ruled 5th house of yours. And so Mars is joining Pluto to merge and potentially create a new story that's going to unfold as Mars continues on and does a full lap around your chart for the next 2.5 years. So for some of you, this could really be initiating a new story that's unfolding over the next 2.5 years around your core motivations, your desires, your plan of actions, where Mars is creating this new story, but Mars is now ruling Neptune. Dissolving. What is your ideal? What no longer supports your joy, your heart's desire? So I think Neptune entering a Mars-ruled area and Mars joining Pluto to create a new story to unfold over the next 2.5 years could potentially be a time of unfolding what is ideal for you, what feels more self-expressive, more joyful for you, that for some of you could be home, family, property, real estate themes as well. That Mars is going to continue over the next 2.5 years, potentially be playing out this Neptune story through your Aries 5th house. If you haven't checked out my Neptune in Aries podcast episode, I highly recommend that. I just focus on Neptune and Aries, some of the major aspects that it will make over the coming years, and I break it down in a lot more detail. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely check that out. If you purchase the 2026 year ahead, you don't have to worry about that because it's already integrated within the months that it is directly connected to or important to certain transits within that month. So again, either way, check it out, see how you feel about it, and see what may be unfolding around desires, motivations, plan of action around your joy, your creativity, your self-expression over the next 2.5 years that Neptune could be playing a major part in. Hello, Capricorn Risings. Kicking off 2026 here on January 6th when we have a Venus Cassimi at 16 degrees. So Venus will be in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes, but it will be at the 16 degree mark in your Capricorn first house of the self, the physical body, how you take independent action, identity, appearance. So really you. And this Cassimi could ultimately bring clarity or insight that impacts you, how you feel in your physical body, how you take independent action. But more specifically, Venus rules your Libra 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So some of you could really be gaining clarity around your business, your career, projects, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment and its impacts to you personally. Venus also rules your Taurus 5th house of joy, which could include creativity, self-expression, romance, children, if applicable to you. So some of you could be gaining additional clarity or insight on those themes and its impacts to you personally, how you want to feel. Maybe some of you are gaining clarity on how you want to express yourselves, how you want to dress, how you want to move through the world, and its impacts to how you sort of go after or move towards the career goals, projects, business, public recognition themes. And then on January 9th, we have the next Cassimi. We have a Mars Cassimi at 19 degrees. So still in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes, but it will be at that 19 degree mark in your Capricorn first house of the self, the physical body, how you take independent action, etc. So again, happening in the area of you. And this could provide additional insight or clarity that personally affects you, especially with Mars still being in its place of exaltation. I think this Cassimi packs a little bit more punch. And with it being in your first house of self, I think a lot of Capricorn risings could really fill this one. Where Mars rules your Aries 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So some of you could be really gaining clarity around the foundation of your lives, people you live with, relationships with family, and its impacts to you. Some of you could even be gaining clarity around the foundation you really need that supports your physical body, supports your ability to take independent action towards the things you really want. Some of you, this could just include a redecoration, a renovation, just sort of very minor tweaks to your current home environment. And some of you, it could be maximal. It could be a relocation. So definitely pay attention to what's going on foundationally in your life, including the relationships with family that could be providing you clarity or insight to what's going on with you personally. Mars also rules the Scorpio 11th house of your social network and your long-term goals. So some of you could gain additional insights to who you want to surround yourselves with that really supports you, supports your ability to move through the world, supports your identity, how you want to show up in the world, but also, I think more importantly, really supports your core motivations, desires involving your long-term goals and sort of how that supports you physically. Then after Mars goes Cassimi on January 9th, Venus will already be in an opposition with Jupiter, but Mars and the Sun will be applying to a pretty close opposition with Jupiter. So the opposition to Jupiter in your 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage, whatever clarity and insight comes through, it might require that oppositional effect of needing to balance it with your connections with others, a personal or professional partnership. So balancing your needs versus the needs of others, but some clarity, insight, or inspiration might shift your perspective on something, and now that needs to be balanced or integrated with your connections with others. Then moving on to January 18th. Yes, January 18th. We have a new moon in your Capricorn first house of the self, physical body at 28 degrees. So really putting this into perspective, you just had two Casimis and a pretty strong opposition with Jupiter. So the first couple weeks of January, a lot of you could have been gaining insight and inspiration or clarity around the areas that I discussed, those particular themes and its impacts to you. And now this new moon comes along, and I think that this is really an opportunity to say, okay, based off of what's unfolded in the past couple weeks, what new seeds do I want to plant? What do I really want to cultivate based off of what's unfolded for some of you in the past couple weeks that you really can cultivate in 2026, but more specifically over the next 5 or 6 months that will lead up to the full moon in your Capricorn first house. Then on January 21st, we have the last Casimi this month with Mercury. So a Mercury Casimi at 1 degree in your Aquarius second house of earned income and self-worth. So this could provide clarity around a financial situation, financial budgets, self-worth, but more specifically, Mercury rules your Virgo ninth house of growth and potential. So this could involve clarity around finances that involve higher knowledge, continuing education, travel plans. If you teach, if you're into publishing, if you travel for work, this could also add additional clarity and insight around finances regarding those themes. Either way, I think that this could be an opportunity for some Capricorn risings to gain clarity and insight around the financial plans, the financial budget that's going to support those growth and potential themes. That could be career related for some of you. And Mercury also rules your Gemini sixth house of daily work and health routine. So this could theoretically provide clarity and insight into the work that you want to do, the routines that really support the work that you want to do, and the vitality and health that you want to feel. For some of you, if it's a health situation, this could provide clarity around maybe the health situation and the finances needed in order to manage it or take care of it. So definitely pay attention to financial themes and health, wellness situations that could come up with clarity and insight around this time if that resonates with you. As always, this isn't conclusive, so definitely take what resonates and leave the rest. Then I want to close out the month on January 26th when Neptune makes its final ingress into your Aries fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate. So Neptune's not going to retrograde back into your Pisces third house. It's not going to return to Pisces for roughly another, 150, 160 years. Not in our lifetime. So Neptune is officially in your Aries fourth house at this time. And so this could really start to initiate that journey on sort of dissolving outdated systems, structures, and patterns that really no longer support your home, family, property, real estate theme. So some of you might start to consider what's really not working. What do you want to dissolve? What structural components aren't serving the ideal foundation? It's going to be a good time to ask yourselves, or some of you, if it resonates, what is your ideal home? What is the ideal foundation that supports you? Especially because the ruler of you, your physical body, yourself, Saturn, will be joining Neptune next month, February 2026. I think to integrate some of those themes. What is the ideal foundation that supports your physical body, yourself, your ability to move independently towards the life that you want to build? And this Neptune is now in a Mars-ruled area, right? Mars rules Aries. And that means that Neptune is now reporting to Mars. And Mars is joining Mars is joining Pluto in your Aquarius second house of earned income and self-worth to initiate a new cycle between Mars and Pluto. for roughly the next 2.5 years. So Mars is joining Pluto as Neptune has just entered a Mars-ruled area. So some of you might also be looking at starting a new story or cycle around your core motivation, desire, plan of action, around your financial situation or your self-worth in order to help support Neptune's journey through creating an ideal. What is your ideal foundation that maybe supports your finances, that supports your self-worth? So very interesting dynamic here. Again, take what resonates, leave the rest. If you haven't listened to my Neptune and Aries podcast episode, I highly recommend it. I really just focus on Neptune, the major transits Neptune will be making, major aspects to over many years to come, going into those details where I think it can put a lot into perspective or provide some details that might resonate with many of you. So definitely check that out. If you purchase my 2026 year ahead, you don't have to worry about that. It's already integrated within the months that it's tied to or it's important. So whatever month there's like a Neptune transit or Neptune's ingress, it's already integrated within that monthly portal. So you don't have to worry about it. But either way, check it out and maybe take some time to consider sort of what's going on with home, family, property, real estate going into 2026 and any new stories or cycles that could be playing out financially or with self-worth that could be playing into this ideal environment or ideal foundation that could be supporting those themes. Hello, Aquarius Risings. Kicking off 2026 on January 6th with this really powerful Venus Cassimi at 16 degrees in your Capricorn 12th house. So Venus Cassimi, Venus is in the heart of the sun or within 17 minutes, but it will be at the 16 degree mark in your Capricorn 12th house of subconscious thought patterns, solitude, dreams, really behind the scenes stuff is where I like to put the 12th house. So definitely pay attention to any of those themes as sort of the stage in which this clarity, insight, or inspiration could come through. So Venus rules your Libra 9th house of growth and potential. So some of you could be gaining insight and clarity around growth and potential themes, or some of you might be seeing those growth and potential themes such as maybe higher knowledge, spirituality, travel. Some of you, it could be through teaching, publishing. Again, it could be career related that provides that clarity or insight that could be really mentally powerful or could come through dreams or anything done in solitude. So I think for Aquarius Risings going into January of 2026, really specifically on January 6th, some of you could experience really powerful insights, clarity, or sort of inspiration that's behind the scenes, that's like mental. Like some of you could be getting this like aha moment that is providing some clarity around the growth and potential themes or the growth and potential you really want to move towards in 2026. So again, this could involve travel plans, continuing education, publishing, teaching, really any growth and potential themes, even ones I didn't list. But Venus, some other possibilities is that Venus also rules your Taurus 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. And so this could also provide powerful insights and clarity around the foundation that really supports you, maybe supports you mentally. Maybe some of you are gaining clarity, insight, and inspiration to sort of making some tweaks to your living situation that really supports your growth and potential, supports the work that you do behind the scenes. So this could also show up in relationships with people you live with or family as well, being a source of clarity and insight to something going on around this time. Then on January 9th, we have the Mars Cassimi at 19 degrees. So again, Mars will be in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes, but it will be at this 19 degree mark. Again, in that Capricorn 12th house of subconscious thought patterns, dreams, solitude, behind the scenes. So Mars is still exalted here. So I think this particular Cassimi packs a punch in terms of clarity, insight, and inspiration. Now, this one is very interesting because Mars rules your Scorpio 10th house of career, business, public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. So some of you could be going into 2026 gaining some really powerful clarity and insights around the work that you want to do, your visibility, what feels more fulfilling to you, as well as Mars ruling your Aries 3rd house of communication, exchanging information. Some of you could get really powerful mental communication. So some of you could get really strong, powerful insights around how you want to communicate with the world. And some of you that might be playing a part in the clarity and insight to your career, your business, your public recognition, or what brings you fulfillment. Some of you could also be having conversations or communicating with people in your immediate daily environment, such as your siblings, extended family, or just those people, places, and things within your everyday immediate environment that could be communicating with you in a variety of ways that provides that source of inspiration or clarity as well. So really, really interesting for Aquarius risings going into 2026. I think most people going into a new year, they're making New Year's resolutions and, all of this. Not to say that you can't or that you're not going to, but Aquarius risings, it looks like you guys are going to be on a totally different level, having a lot of like subconscious clarity, clarity or insights around your thought patterns, what's coming up internally or subconsciously that could be providing really powerful insights to how you want to move and communicate with the world, or really powerful insights and clarities to inspiring more of the work that you do, your visibility, your career, your business, or what brings you fulfillment. Then after Mars is Cassimi. Venus will already be in an opposition to Jupiter, but Mars and the Sun will be applying to an opposition. So pretty much around the 9th, we'll have Mars, the Sun, and Venus in an opposition with Jupiter in your Cancer 6th house of daily work, health, and routines. So I think this is when whatever clarity, insight, or inspiration might have come through. For some of you, it could definitely come through behind the scenes or more intimately one-on-one with individuals. Either way, whatever clarity and insight has come through the first week of January. The opposition to Jupiter in your 6th house could be you trying to balance and integrate it within your everyday routines, within your daily work routines, or integrating it within your health and wellness routines. So sort of balancing your health, your vitality, your routines that support your work and vitality, but also support whatever insights, clarity, and inspiration you're sort of coming into 2026 with. Then on January 18th, we have a new moon at 28 degrees in your Capricorn 12th house of subconscious thought patterns, behind the scenes, solitude, dreams. So this new moon could be interesting for Aquarius risings because you just had a couple Cassimis there and a really major opposition. And so whatever's unfolded the first couple weeks of January, I think this new moon comes along just in time to say, okay, based off of what sort of shifted, maybe what clarity or insights you're sort of gaining as you're literally coming into 2026, this new moon comes along and says, how do you want to integrate this? How do you want to plant those seeds to cultivate whatever clarity and insight or inspiration some of you have gotten at this juncture? So regardless, this is a great new moon to set those new intentions that even the clarity and insights that came through for some of you could be integrated within, or just really creating new chapters and new sort of new ideas that you really want to cultivate that for some of you could be starting behind the scenes. But on a very, very basic, superficial layer, some of you might actually be going into the new year, setting new intentions around carving out time for more solitude, to do the work that you want to do, to step into the vitality that you want to feel. And that might require a little bit more scheduled time for solitude, or scheduling time for more rest and recharge to sort of balance these areas for some of you even. Then moving on to January 21st, we have the last planet this month going through a Cassimi. We have a Mercury Cassimi. So again, Mercury in the heart of the sun, or within 17 minutes at that 1 degree mark in your Aquarius first house of the self, the physical body, your identity, your appearance, how you want to show up in the world. So a lot of you could be now shifting from behind the scenes in that 12th house and moving into a more visible first house, where some of you could be communicating the clarity, the insight, or gaining additional clarity and insight to what's really going to support you, support your identity, how you want to show up in the world. But what's interesting is that Mercury rules your Gemini 5th house of joy, which could include creative projects, artistic pursuits, self-expression, romance, or children themes, if applicable to you. So some of you could be really gaining clarity around your creativity, your self-expression in 2026, what you want to cultivate, and how to maybe integrate that within your identity and how you want to show up in the world. Some of you could have clarity around your children, if that's applicable to you, and its impacts to sort of you and how you want to feel. So some of you could be gaining clarity and insight around a variety of things that could involve whatever's bringing you joy. And that could be creativity, self-expression, romance. And Mercury also rules this Virgo 8th house of transformational work, or those long-term financial themes like investments, assets, debt, loans, partners, resources. So some of you could be gaining clarity on financial themes that could be supporting what's bringing you joy, like creative projects, children, self-expression. Some of you could also be gaining clarity on any transformational work or transformational decisions that also support more joy, more creativity, more self-expression, etc., and its impacts to you, your physical body, and how you want to move through the world. Then I want to close out the month on January 26th, when Neptune makes its final ingress into your Aries 3rd house of communication, exchanging information. So some of you, this could be personal communication, exchanging information with people in your everyday immediate environment. Maybe it's siblings, extended family, neighbors, community. Some of you, it could be professional. So this could show up through professional work, especially if you work in communication fields, transportation, technology, etc. So lots on the table here with the 3rd house, but Neptune is no longer going to return to Pisces, at least in your lifetime. And Neptune's final ingress into this area could really initiate that journey of dissolving outdated systems, structures, and boundaries around communication, exchanging information, really your immediate everyday environment, how you want to feel literally like running errands, communicating with your neighbors, how you communicate with the world, if it's professional or personal, really daily movement. And Neptune, in my opinion, it can be a challenging planet to work with sometimes, but I think it's always good to ask ourselves with Neptune, what is our ideal? What is the ideal outcome? What is the ideal situation we're trying to create? And for you, through your communication, exchanging information, maybe it's relationships with siblings or extended family, or just creating an ideal environment with your community, your neighborhood, your daily movement. And Saturn is going to join Neptune here next month in February of 2026. And I think Saturn is going to help bring the structural components to building what that ideal is regarding those 3rd house themes. And what's interesting about Neptune's ingress into Aries is that Neptune has entered a Mars-ruled area. Mars rules Aries. And so Neptune is now reporting to Mars. And Mars is joining Pluto to create a new cycle, a new story that's going to unfold as Mars continues around your chart for the next 2.5 years. So that is very, very interesting to me, where Neptune's ingress into a Mars-ruled area, where Mars is now starting a new cycle with Pluto in your first house of self, the physical body, your identity, your appearance, how you want to show up in the world. And so for some of you, again, take what resonates, leave the rest, but whatever is dissolving or is just no longer serving that ideal situation regarding those third house themes, it could also be playing into this new potential story that's unfolding for some of you around how you show up in the world, your identity, your appearance, your physical body, maybe how you want to feel in your physical body, or any identity themes that some of you could really start to step into or start to unfold over the next 2.5 years. That could definitely be playing into these Neptunian themes through your Aries third house. If you haven't checked out my Neptune and Aries podcast episode, I highly recommend it. I go into a lot more detail about what this can mean for you, the major transits, aspects that are happening over many years to come, to help put this into perspective. If you purchase the 2028 year ahead on my website, you don't need to worry about that. The Neptune podcast episodes are already integrated within the monthly portals that it is directly connected to with the transits that month. So either way, check it out. I think it could definitely help put things into perspective. But I would say going into January, especially closing out January, what new cycle do you feel is starting for some of you around your core motivations, desires, and plan of action that could be really shifting you into a new sense of self, a more powerful sense of self, a just taking on sort of more action and desire around taking action towards the things in the life that you really want to build, that can be really motivating and really empowering to you, your physical body, how you show up in the world, how other people view you. That could be connected to this Neptune transit, where you could be shifting your communication, how you communicate with the world, whether it's personal or professional. Hello, Pisces Risings. So kicking off 2026 on January 6th with this Venus Cassimi at 16 degrees. So Venus Cassimi, Venus is in the heart of the sun or within 17 minutes, but it will be at the 16 degree mark in your Capricorn 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. So your social network, your long-term goals, your dreams, your aspirations is really the stage or the arena in which this could really show up. And so Venus rules your Libra 8th house of transformational work, transformational decisions, as well as your long-term financial goals or management. So investments, assets, debt, loans, partners, resources. Could be a source of clarity, insight, or inspiration regarding your long-term goals or who you want to surround yourselves with. So this could be a time of insight and clarity around transformational decisions that align you to certain individuals, that simultaneously align you to your long-term goals. Some of you could get clarity and insight around financial situations or financial themes that are playing a part in your long-term goals, dreams, or aspirations around this time. Venus also rules your Taurus 3rd house of communication, exchanging information. So some of you could literally, it could be a literal translation, getting the clarity, the insight, and inspiration through conversations, communication, exchanging information that could provide clarity and insights towards your long-term goals or interacting with certain individuals that align to those long-term goals. With Venus ruling the 3rd house of communication, other things on the table could be sort of short distance travel, relationships with siblings, extended family, sort of those people, places, and things within your everyday immediate environment could be a source of insight or be a source to provide that clarity or insight to who you need to surround yourselves with or long-term goals that could be going on around this time. On January 9th, we have the next Cassimi. We have a Mars Cassimi, again, in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes, but it will be at the 19-degree mark in your Capricorn 11th house of your social network, your long-term goals. Remember, Mars is still in its place of exaltation. So this Cassimi, in my opinion, packs a little bit more potency, packs a little bit more of a punch that you might feel. And Mars rules your Scorpio 9th house of growth and potential, which could include travel themes or spirituality, higher knowledge, continuing education, publishing, teaching, really any of those growth and potential themes that could also be feeding or playing into your career public recognition for some of you, that you could get clarity and insight around those growth and potential themes and how they're sort of playing a part in that plan of action around a long-term goal, or how certain growth and potential themes or providing clarity and insight around certain groups, friends, and communities that might be a resource to you around this time. Mars also rules your Aries second house of earned income and self-worth. So I think it's interesting how the first week of January, we have the ruler of your long-term finances and the ruler of your earned income, your immediate finances, really, both having a Cassimi in your 11th house of long-term goals. So for some of you, this could have really potent financial themes and gaining clarity and insight around a financial situation that could be playing into your long-term goals or your social network a lot around this time. But Mars also rules the second house, which is also your self-worth. So some of you could really be gaining clarity and insight around your value, your self-worth, and properly aligning that to your long-term goals and who you want to surround yourselves with, or certain groups and communities that support your value, that support your self-worth. Also consider around this time on the 9th, we're pretty much going to have Mars and the Sun applying to an opposition with Jupiter and Venus already in or closing out an opposition with Jupiter. Where this opposition, where you're going to get these Cassimis in your 11th house of your social network and long-term goals. And then they're going to basically oppose Jupiter in your Cancer 5th house of joy, creativity, self-expression, romance, children, if applicable. So some of you could be going into the first week of January, gaining this clarity and insight that could be playing a part with who you surround yourselves with and your long-term goals. And maybe that clarity, insight, or inspiration with this opposition to Jupiter in your 5th house might need to be integrated. It might need to be balanced with the expansion some of you are seeing with your children, with your creativity, your self-expression, or just what brings you joy. And then on January 18th, I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. There will be a new moon at 28 degrees in your Capricorn 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. So it's interesting how this new moon comes along after those two Cassimis came around with that really major opposition. I think this new moon comes along just in time to say, hey, what clarity, insight, and inspiration sort of really came up for you in the past couple weeks. That now this new moon comes along and says, okay, based off of what's unfolded and where you really want to go in 2026 around your long-term goals, that definitely could include finances or self-worth themes. Either way, I think this new moon is an excellent time to either integrate what's unfolded in the past 2 weeks, if it resonates for you, and plant those seeds and really start to cultivate and move towards that new chapter, or cultivate what you want around who you want to surround yourselves with and those long-term goals into 2026. Then on January 21st, we have the last Cassimi taking place this month with Mercury, a Mercury Cassimi at 1 degree. So again, in the heart of the sun within 17 minutes. But it will be at this 1 degree mark in your Aquarius 12th house of the subconscious thought patterns, dreams, solitude, really behind the scenes stuff. So this is interesting because I think a lot of you could get clarity and insight that is happening mentally or really behind the scenes that could be partnership related or home, family, property, real estate related. So Mercury rules your Virgo 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. So some of you could really be gaining clarity and insight around your mental thought patterns, maybe where you limit yourselves, what's going on mentally, what's going on behind the scenes that could provide some sense of clarity or insight to a personal or professional partnership situation. Or some of you with Mercury ruling your Gemini 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate, some of you could get some really powerful insights and clarity around relationships with your family, relationships with people you live with, a property or real estate situation that for you could be really happening mentally or behind the scenes or just in solitude. So I think this Mercury Cassimi for Pisces risings in particular is really interesting because the clarity and insight could come through dreams, like tuning in and down, solitude, meditation, just kind of spending time more just alone, if that's possible. Either way, definitely pay attention to any of those themes and sort of what's going on behind the scenes for you or mentally that is potentially creating the container or the space for you to get that clarity and insight around the foundation of your life, what really supports you, your home, your family, or what is going on with a personal or professional partnership situation that you could really be getting downloads or sort of more clarity and insights on internally or just behind the scenes. Then I want to close out the month on January 26th when Neptune makes its final ingress into your Aries 2nd house of earned income and self-worth. So Neptune is not going to return back to your Pisces 1st house, at least in your lifetime. So maybe another 150, 160 years. So you definitely don't need to worry about Neptune going back into Pisces, which some of you are probably going to be very happy about. But Neptune's final ingress into your Aries 2nd house could really initiate that journey around your relationship with money, your relationship with your self-worth. So some of you, Neptune's transit through Aries is lengthy. It's there for a number of years. So we got a long time to work with this, but Neptune going through your Aries 2nd house for some of you might start to have you contemplate what is your ideal relationship with money? What is your ideal way of earning money? What is your ideal outcome with your value, your innate gifts, talents, and self-worth? So this could be a time where some of you might start to feel the effects of maybe dissolving outdated systems, structures, and boundaries that no longer support how you want to make money, the relationship you want to feel with money, your relationship to your value system, and your self-worth. Saturn is going to join Neptune here next month in February of 2026. So I think when Saturn enters this area, I think it could help bring the structural components to building that container that you want in terms of how you earn money, how you make money, your relationship to money, or your self-worth. That could definitely be playing into your long-term goals and who you surround yourselves with. So I think this is an interesting time where you're gaining clarity and insight around your social network and your long-term goals that could be gearing you up to sort of shift into how that plays into how you earn money, how that plays into your relationship with your value system and your self-worth. So that Saturn comes along next month and says, okay, what container do you want to build that can support your ideal situation? And so this could be a little bit of a transition zone for a lot of Pisces risings where you're sort of dissolving, but that in-between space can be a little bit confusing. I mean, Neptune can be a little illusionary and confusing at times. So that in-between space for you in terms of like how you earn money, relationship with self-worth, and how that plays into your long-term goals and who you surround yourselves with could be this transition period. So definitely give yourselves some space and some grace to work through it. But what I also want to point out about Neptune moving into your Aries second house is that it's reporting to Mars. So Mars rules Aries. And so Neptune is now starting to report to Mars. And Mars is joining Pluto in your Aquarius 12th house of behind the scenes to initiate a new cycle with Pluto, where a new story could unfold. So I think this is a really interesting time where things are starting to shift. And with Neptune ingressing into a Mars-ruled area, and Mars is initiating a new cycle or story for some of you that can unfold over the next 2.5 years around plan of action, motivation, desire, and how that can ultimately transform you and empower you mentally, subconsciously, behind the scenes. So I actually think for some Pisces risings, you could be sort of working with those subconscious thought patterns and how they play into creating this ideal relationship to money, to your values and your self-worth, so that when Saturn goes through this area, you can strengthen it, you can increase your capacity for it over the next couple years. Again, if you haven't checked out the Neptune and Aries podcast episode that I posted months ago, definitely check that out. I go into a lot more detail about Neptune going through your second house, certain transits, aspects it's going to make over the coming years that can help put this into perspective. If you purchase my 2026 year ahead, you don't have to worry about that because it's already integrated within the monthly portals or the months that it is directly connected to important Neptune transits. So you don't need to worry about that. But either way, check that out. I think closing out January could be a good time to say, like what new cycles or stories could be playing out for you that could be starting behind the scenes or mentally over the next 2.5 years that could really support your mental thought patterns, your vision. But I think this Mars-Pluto cycle initiating around the time that Neptune enters this Mars-ruled area could be initiating a new story to unfold over the next 2.5 years that can hopefully sort of create a more empowering, transformative story that can unfold over the next 2.5 years that plays into your growth and potential you really want to work towards and take action towards, and also your earned income and self-worth that you want to step into, transform, and take action towards as well.